Okay, guys, it says everyone can see and hear you. Okay, everyone can see and hear you guys. Just so you know, your mics are on, okay? I can't see myself, but man, this guy sounds amazing.
At thy speaking, it was
I know this song. Isn't that book with all those other songs?
Good job with that song there, Adam.
Oh,
Great.
hey. That's so weird.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. It's been a little while since we've done one of our church NeXt episodes. Today, we're going to talk about back to live and what does that look like going forward. And we know that not all states are doing things the same. So we're going to have a little bit of discussion about what some folks have done and what others are planning. As always, if you have any comments, Facebook, YouTube, please post those and we can read those and we'll try to respond as much as possible. Today, again, we have Adam Countryman with us, Leah Abel, and Max Murphy. So let's just kind of go around the horn. We'll introduce ourselves. First, I'm Phil Grimpo with Inspire Media Productions. I work with churches around the country, and especially right now talking about video. That's kind of our forte. So working with a lot of churches, getting people the equipment they need and handling the technical side of streaming and broadcast. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, I think Leah was going to introduce herself next, but you know, that I think we should do that because then I'm going to go from there. So, ladies and gentlemen, Leah Abel.
Okay, I'm Leah Abel, and I have Abel Project Management and Facilitation. So I work with lots of churches and organizations to do project management, plan events, and things like that. So right now, in the midst of COVID, I am maybe less planning and more coaching is where we're at.
And Leah is in Colorado, in the Denver area, and Phil is in Nebraska, in one of two towns that actually are on the map. He is in Lincoln. So I have relatives from Columbus, Nebraska, but I feel like there's a Columbus everywhere. So I probably shouldn't even have mentioned that.
Sorry for my Columbus friends.
Yeah, sorry. My name is Adam Countryman. I am the Director of Worship Arts at Concordia in San Antonio, and I run Countryman Consulting. And so we have been talking a lot on these deals about where you're at as a church and where we're going and what's next and all that kind of stuff. And today we're talking about going back to live church. So we've asked Max Murphy to join us. And Max is a great guy for us to talk to. He's a pastor at Cornerstone Church in Carmel, Indiana. And that's a northern suburb of Indianapolis. So, yeah, they've got a really great community up there, and so just a really great ministry. So he's going to tell us a little bit about that. But I wanted to talk to Max because they've done so much in terms of trying new things and have really kind of thrown stuff at the wall, see what sticks and what works. And so we're really interested to hear what he has to say. Now, Max is a DCE. Let me follow this up. Max, you'll totally correct me when I'm wrong here. But he started as a teacher, DCE guy, and then spent a ton of time in music ministry. And he's part of the Wally leadership team and Center for Worship Leadership. He's a great singer. He's a great player. He runs all of their praise bands and things with some help of some others. And now he's a pastor on their staff there. So that's what I know about Max, other than that he's a great guy.
Thank you.
And he's not going to talk about running at all.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
That's you got it. Yeah, I was DCE youth director, and did a lot of song leading back then, and then over the years just kind of grew more and more into worship leading until I got a call here to Cornerstone Lutheran, formerly Carmel Lutheran in Indiana, and through just kind of feeling God's call to take it to the next step to be a pastor for this community. I went through the S&P program at St. Louis. So, yeah, that's what I do.
Awesome. Well, that's great, man. As we talk about opening up, I wanted, Max, can you share kind of some of the things that your congregation has been trying? And as we get some comments on the chat, we can address some of those questions as well. But what are some of the things that you tried for? How long have you guys been having people back on your campus? Maybe we start there.
Yeah. So when the order first came down for us to close, for everybody, went into lockdown. We have 3 campuses. So we're a multi-site church. We've done live streaming of our services at all of those campuses for years. So when we got the call to lockdown, we quickly went to pre-recording our services. Our very first services during COVID lockdown were pre-recorded, and we used staff from each one of our campuses, whether pastoral or musical staff. We did 2 pre-recorded services, 1 traditional, 1 contemporary. We have equal number of traditional and contemporary services at each of our campuses. So we did that. The first time that we met back on our campus, we were going to have an Easter service, a drive-in Easter service. And we got approval from our local mayor and things like that, from our local health officials that it was okay to do that. We wanted to have a communion service. And then I don't remember what happened, but something happened where actually it's Carmel. Yeah, it's carmellutheran.org. So the like just maybe 3 or 4 days before the service, we kind of got a cease and desist. You can't do this. So we ended up not doing it. But I think maybe 2 weeks later, the restrictions backed off again. So we ended up having an on-campus drive-in service with a radio frequency signal sent to our parking lot. We had about 100 cars, maybe 250 people. So that was maybe 2 weeks after Easter.
Can you talk through, Max, some of, because a lot of we've seen this in newspapers here and on the news here in Texas, but I'm sure in every state this has been happening. But what are some of the logistics behind doing that? Like, is there, because it seems if you've never done it before, it might seem like that is a huge lift. Like, wait, we got to broadcast on the radio? Like, What does that mean?
So just logistics as far as space, we had to figure out what was the best campus based on parking lot, how many spots we had. We actually socially distanced the cars front to back, and then a row apart, and then front to back, all the way through. So we brought them in orderly. We took them out orderly. You only rolled down one window to receive the communion elements. But as far as how technologically how it happened, we actually have somebody that works for Raytheon in radio frequency here at our congregation. So he knew exactly the right kind of, FM broadcaster to purchase. I think it was $100 on Amazon. It went easily all around our parking lot. He knew all the FCC regulations and rules, and I could probably get the details on that. I'm sure Phil probably has some of that too. But it really all it took was coming out of a small soundboard that we had in our gym that I rolled to the back. All we had was a microphone. Our senior pastor, we did a short 20-minute service with no music. All it was basically invocation, confession, absolution, prayers, communion, benediction, and that was it. So in 20 minutes, we were out. So it was just one microphone, and it was 2 RCA plug, left, right RCA going into a little radio frequency signal. It was on 88.1 in people's cars, and it worked great.
So it's easier than maybe what it seems like at the onset to do. Leah, your church just did this, right? This last weekend. How did it go for you guys?
That was good. It actually worked well because we still are not able to really gather yet. All of us coming, but it was our first one. We did Pentecost, which seemed kind of sweet actually to be together for that. We had people sign up ahead of time. They did, so we kind of knew how many cars were coming. We knew how many cars we could fit. We had a stage set up outside so they could see the pastors. And then we had volunteers who walked to the cars and gave them, here's the elements. But similar to what Max is saying, it wasn't complicated from a...
Now, did you guys do the individual wafers and the plastic cups, or did you do like the hermetically sealed, like crinkly ones that...
Yeah.
That's what we did, was you buy them ahead of time. They were prepackaged.
Right. So you didn't actually have to pour wine and...
Yeah, we did the
separate
same. And there's actually a company here in Indiana that sells alcohol wine and not just grape juice. There's probably a few of them, but I know some people have struggled to find real wine.
I've never struggled to find real wine, but I have appreciated it when I have found it, which I think Indiana or any state for that matter.
Sure.
So
I don't think it was actually made here, brewed here, fermented here in Indiana.
fermented. Yeah, it's from Napa probably.
Yeah.
So, well, that's cool. I think we had talked about doing some of that. We haven't done it yet, and I don't know that we will because our parking lot is so unusual. But I think, like Max said, looking at the different spaces that you have available to you, and Leah, it sounds like you guys did like a registration kind of deal. That's always cool too.
I mostly gave us a chance to help people feel like some kind of movement because it was starting to feel a little stagnant. If that makes sense.
Right,
to Jeff.
yeah.
So it gave us something that said, I know we're not where we want to be, but we're doing something. So that was kind of a big push for us.
Yeah, and we worked with congregations all the way from a main stage inside being simulcast to an LED wall and transmitted to just FM transmitters. A couple of the churches we worked with have been doing that since day one, have been FM transmitting to the parking lot. No visuals, just audio. And then this week we have a church opening up that'll be a full band outside with an LED wall and then a little children's movie or something afterwards. So people are kind of running.
That's a cool idea.
The one thing, I don't know if you guys did this, Max, we put some sound out into the room so it wasn't like completely dead in the parking lot. Because like at the movie nights we had, people would get out of their cars and like sit in some regular seats or open up the backs of their trucks. So we had some music in the parking lot, not just FM out. It kind of filled it out a little bit.
We have really, and we can talk about this. We have been erring on the side of safety, and so we didn't want people getting out of their cars. That was part of the concern from the beginning. I know that people are across the spectrum as to how they want to handle this, but we have erred on the side of being safe so that those people that are most fearful feel as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, the first one was just because the volunteers and the parking attendants stood out during the worship service and could hear nothing because they weren't in any cars. They had nobody to participate. So then we brought a speaker out. Yeah.
Right. Max, outside of the drive-through experience, what other things have you guys done?
So we have done the another way, because we really, coming from the Lutheran background, we really value Holy Communion, and so we tried to find ways to get communion into people's hands, and so we shied away from doing the digital communion over the internet where people have their own elements in their house, and they did that just for various reasons. We chose not to do that. But so we offered a short, maybe 10-minute service, especially for our seniors that don't feel comfortable coming to our in-person worship, which we do. We've been doing in-person worship for about 5 weeks now. And I'll come back to that. But so we offered just short little 10-minute, during 15-minute time slots, so that between we would clean the communion rail with no more than 6 people coming in, receiving communion. And that was really powerful for the people, especially seniors who hadn't been back to church in 2 or 3 months to receive communion. But we've been doing in-person worship as soon as we got the okay from our governor that it was okay to limit the number of people in worship, as long as they were socially distanced. So we taped off in our traditional spaces. We taped off the pews where we kind of did a checkerboard pattern where it was six feet apart. Families can sit together within those. And then in our contemporary space where we have the movable chairs, we took out 3/4 of the chairs, and then we spaced all the chairs 6 feet apart. And when a family comes in, they can grab chairs, slide them together, and worship. We've been doing, just to make sure our numbers didn't overwhelm the room, we've been doing where you have to get, I'm slipping on the word, you have to register that you're coming to our worship. We have Saturday night worship, traditional and contemporary. We have Sunday morning, traditional and contemporary at our Carmel campus. Our other campuses are only doing Sunday morning, but again, you have to register ahead of time.
Max, are you with those services? What did you run into with ushering. That's been a big talking point for us as we get ready to go back is, how forceful do the ushers get in terms of like, no, you gotta stay away. And then are you ushering people out along with telling them where to sit, or, can you speak to that briefly too?
So
just like how you dealt with that?
At first we had this huge team of ushers and we were like, ready to, lay down the law, and we put X's on the ground and you have to do all this stuff. And what we found is that, so for example, our Saturday night service is normally 125, 150. We've been getting 30. Our Sunday morning service, we would normally have 500 at our contemporary, and we're getting 50. So we did not have the need for the number of people and crowd control. Plus, people don't all come at the same time. And so we do kind of usher people towards the front, trying to keep social distancing so you're not walking past other groups of people. Everybody's wearing a mask. And at the end, we usher people out, or we ask people in the back to leave first.
How'd you do singing?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I've been leading for a few weeks, and then I got to preach one week. And so I was sitting there trying to sing, and I couldn't sing in a mask. I was out of breath. First of all, I was running from one end of our building to the other to make it to the other service. But when I was trying to sing in a mask, it was frustrating. So there are those in our congregation that they either won't come because they're frustrated that they have to be cattle herded and, wear a mask. Like it's the antithesis of freedom in Christ when you come to worship and you're told where to stand and where to sit, all that stuff.
Right. But you require masks while you're in the room.
Yeah. Anybody. And that's kind of one of our state, mandated things. Again, we're not doing it because we have to, but we want to be good neighbors. We want to love our neighbors by following local guidelines. I know some churches, that's the debated thing. Do you follow the government mandates or not? We have erred again on the side of saying, look, we're doing this to be good neighbors to each other, to our community. We don't want to be that group of Christians that are thumbing their nose at authority and all of that. So we've tried to follow the rules as best we can.
That's cool. John Jordaning, our beloved friend, has posted a question. Phil, can you put that up there? Yeah. So it's been said that a transmitted church must first be an embodied church. What aspects of the embodied church did you prioritize for your online services? And just to be clear, since you're doing in-person worship, you're still doing online worship.
Yeah. So we're actually doing pretty much everything. We're doing pre-recorded, produced services for traditional and contemporary, but we had people saying, hey, I want to see people worshiping. So we are now live streaming our live services as well. So on a weekend, you can either watch the pre-recorded service or you can watch it happening live in the room. Now the pre-recorded service is longer. It's got more music. It's better produced, obviously. We have not put a lot of production into what's happening live. We kind of set up a camera in the back of the room and purposely show the congregation more because that's what people want to see. Right. So John asked about the embodied church. We've done a couple of different things, and I've seen this at other congregations to get people involved. We've done a sharing of the peace where we have people send in videos of their family saying, welcome or peace, or we've had the creed mix in where people will record themselves saying part of the creed, and we'll produce that in. We actually recorded a song, and we put it at the end of our produced service and asked people to film themselves singing along. And then we took what they sent in, and then we kind of mashed it into the next week's service to see people worshiping. So we used that same song with the live of people, just trying to mix it up. We've talked about having kids and children's messages say the prayer along with the pastor. Yeah.
One thing we did was live tweets. So we told people at the beginning of the service, tweet your family watching worship to this hashtag. And then during the offering time, when there was no offering being taken, we just scrolled through all those pictures of people saying, hey, we're worshiping with them in front of the TV, which was kind of nice.
You had someone filter that, Phil?
Yeah, just using Pro Presenter, because Pro Presenter can pull in tweets. You can just approve the ones you want and create, and then just hit show. And as they came in, we just built a playlist of them. Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because I like to watch online church, in my pajamas or, underwear or whatever. So I thought, if you were able to just send in your photos, you might catch some weird things unless there's somebody.
You were the reason why we made sure we could approve.
Okay, good. Well, I just wanted to make sure that, I was looking out for you, really, is what that was about.
So Max, I have a question, because you and Adam both did the same thing, where you said you had been streaming for so long already. Why did you switch to pre-recorded? And when are you going to switch out of this, what you're doing right now with all these options? What's the plan for that? Or is that now how you're going to do it?
So we switched to pre-recorded because we had 3 campuses and we wanted everybody we weren't having live services. Mm-hmm. And so we said, well, what's the use of doing a live Sunday morning service with nobody in the room? Let's go ahead and kind of put our best foot forward. Let's get everybody involved. And let's just kind of see what we can do. I think it was also kind of like, hey, this is an opportunity to see what can we produce. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of a growing thing for us. And again, I said we went back to doing the live stream because people wanted to see what was happening. But your question is a great question. And I was really pushing that with our congregation yesterday with our senior leadership to say, why did we do this before? Why are we doing it now? Why would we continue or not continue? Asking the why questions and what's our purpose in doing this? Because everybody likes it. They get to see their church putting the best band forward, the best, the best sermon, the best lighting, the best.
All the lyrics are at the right time, because in post-production you put it exactly the right spot.
So we're seeing a drop. Not drop. People are not coming back to live worship like we thought they would. And there's lots of different reasons for that. They might be scared of their own health. They might be scared of the health of others, and they don't want to hurt other people. If they have kids, how do they keep their kids in line and make sure that they're not going around spreading germs? Some people don't feel like they want to come back with any restrictions. As soon as there are 0 restrictions, you let me know, and then I'll be back, kind of thing.
My family just liked the schedule. We do church after supper on Sunday.
Right.
Way easier. Yeah.
Or even on Saturday. We drop our live, our pre-recorded on Saturday afternoon, because that's when our services normally start. Mm-hmm. So you can watch church on Saturday night whenever you want. And yeah, so there is that too.
Because I know, my concern, I was looking through our webinars here, and the first one, my concern was, now that you've been doing all this cool post-production, are you ready for when this is over, and what's it going to look like? And we have a large church here in town that everybody has fallen in love with how good the lyrics are and how the rolling lower thirds are and the camera angles and the depth of field. And they're like, we cannot duplicate this. And they're like, why can't we keep this quality of production? You don't have live is a very different beast. Yeah. Than post-production. And now when your staff doesn't have all this time, because there's churches that their pastors were taking turns editing the sermons, editing the services. Well, yeah. I sure hope that when things get back to live, you don't have the time to be doing post-production on services. So you got to find out some alternate solution moving forward.
Well, Phil, I think that speaks to a great point too, which is probably another whole conversation, but that's, we all have a certain level of ignorance when it comes to somebody else's role, right? Mm-hmm. So like, myself as a worship guy, I can't tell you how many congregation members have said to me, like, so what do you do during the week? Right. It's like, really? Okay. Nothing. I do nothing during the week. But the same thing could go with this, is like, your senior leadership doesn't understand. It's not that they don't want to understand. Maybe they don't want to understand. I don't know. But they don't know what it takes. And so to say like, well, why can't we just keep doing it? They have no idea.
Yeah.
You might have, we have a video guy on staff, and right now he's working till 7-8 o'clock at night every night.
Yeah.
So at some point you go back to live. Now he's got to run a volunteer team, and he's got to do all these other things. And what happens to him then? Yeah. He's going to die.
I see these on church sound and media tech page, all these guys on Saturday night. Hey, how's your timeline coming? And they have these ginormous premiere timelines. I'm like, that's Saturday night. That is an incredible amount of stress.
Yeah,
So
it's huge.
to go back to John's question, I think it makes us ask the question: how is online church, and what to what level are we going to invest in online church, and for what reasons and what purposes? And is it? I was listening to a Matt Chandler sermon the other day, and he said during COVID he's been doing his sermons recorded sitting in a chair because he doesn't want to feel comfortable standing around like he would normally do a sermon, because this is not the way things are supposed to be. He's supposed to be in a room with people hearing the word of God in person, not electronically. Now we can debate that, but that was at least his mindset to say, this is not the way things are supposed to be. I don't know if that's true or not, but we have to at least ask the question.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Practically speaking, just to kind of wrap up this section, Max, so you've done the drive-in thing, you've done the small communion services for seniors, you've gone back to church in some capacity with certain, with smaller numbers showing up. Number one, is there anything else that you've tried? Number two, what pushback, if any, have you gotten from either congregation, community, leadership, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, when we went back to live, we decided to do a 30-minute service to limit social exposure, to limit the use of the bathrooms, to limit people's wearing masks and all of that stuff. So we did an abbreviated service. We've had communion at every service because we feel like that's something that we're going to take advantage of in person. We don't normally have communion at every service. It's every other. So those are some things that that we have done. We eliminated, the children's message. Obviously, kids don't come up front together.
Right. Have you kept the pre-sealed communion stuff?
We have, because just it seems like it's more sanitary at the moment. So we thought we were going to have an Easter communion, so we bought 3,000 cups. So
you have a lot of inventory.
Yeah, we have plenty of inventory because our services now, we have maybe 200 or 300 in person on a weekend. So we're good for at least another few weeks to have that. So it's all good. One of the practical things I would say is that don't assume anything. When you go back to doing live worship, you better a week out make sure. Like I would do dress rehearsals. Because you haven't done it in 2 or 3 or 4 months. I know for me, I was grabbing gear and microphones and cables and cords. And when we went back, it's like, hey, Pro Tools isn't coming up. Oh man, I forgot I took the interface over to that thing. And so it's like, so just give yourself plenty of time. Don't assume like every week, when you're in the flow, you just go and you click the switch and we're ready to roll. You haven't done it in months and months and months. So just make sure you're ready, because you don't want your first live, back in to be, oh man, the light, like for example, the lighting, our PC updated. So then the lighting wasn't talking to the PC anymore. And so like, I'm just 5 minutes before the service, I finally got our lighting back up. So, just things like that. Don't assume that everything's going to work right away.
To that point, Steve Zank has a comment over here in the chat. Have you guys seen the Barna research about recent online participation by adult churchgoers? And I know a couple of us have. I haven't personally seen it, but I've just heard some of the conversation. Max, have you seen this research that Barna's putting out?
I haven't, but all I know is that our weekend attendance in person was about 1,600, and we've had regularly over 2,000 views a week. So we feel like our giving has been good. It's been right at budget, if not a little over budget giving. So
that's great.
Leah,
have you guys seen that? Have you looked at that as you talk to other churches around the country?
I believe it. I don't have the number right in front of me, so if I misquote this, I apologize. But I believe the number I saw is that, initially we saw this big bump and everybody was doing online service and they were like jazzed about it and they were there. And then a lot of us have seen those numbers come down. Some of us have seen those numbers come up, but I think some of that might be church moving, not new views. So-and-so's or online service is better. But I believe the number is something like within the last 4 weeks, 43% of Christians have actually watched their service. 40, so like less than half. And these are like people that would say, "Hey, I'm Christian." Right. I see we've got the link there to pull that up. But the other piece that I know that Adam, you and I talked about a little bit was how are people going to decide to come back, which I think definitely speaks, Max, to what you guys are experiencing. The numbers are not nearly what you'd normally have. I'm looking at the numbers because I happen to have them in front of me. But everybody kind of said different things about when they'll be ready to come back. About 20%, 21.5% said when there's a low community level of COVID cases, then I'll come back. Someone said when the guidelines about social distancing are lifted, that was 17% said I'll come back. 14% are going to base it on what are businesses doing. 8% are basing it on restaurants. 4% are saying I won't come back till schools are open. And 3% are saying when the vaccine's ready. They're not coming back till then. So, I mean, it's all over the map.
Well, this is off our agenda, but I want to talk about this a little bit because I think, one of the things that I asked Max was, what pushback have you gotten? Well, we're seeing different guidelines in different states, right? So none of us are in the same situation unless we're down the street from each other. And even then our congregations are still different. The response is different. The average age and family makeup may be different as well. For instance, churches that are our size or larger here in San Antonio are, a lot of them are talking about not going back until September, August, and we know that the date is always moving. We know that the truth is always moving about what is happening right now because it's hard to get actual information about this deal. But in Colorado, I was talking with Leah earlier, and it's like for the state to say you can go back to church, but you can only have 50 people. Well, if you knew what Max knows, that's not that big of a deal maybe for their Saturday night at X time service because they have 30 people coming, but their Sunday morning service now, that is a problem. So, is that that creates this divide because there's people on both ends of the spectrum, like Max said earlier. So if you have somebody behind you, like one thing we did at Concordia here last week is we had live graduation for our 8th graders. It was the first live event that we did. We had 35 kids sign up to come that were comfortable coming with their immediate family members only. Socially distanced, masks, the whole 9 yards, right? Well, we started out with a song and it struck me as I said, it still can be worshipful with a song in your heart. It doesn't have to come off your lips. Thinking about that. And then I'm like, that's great for you, for like that person. But what about the person 2 rows in front of you who doesn't want you singing behind them? Then I'm like, well, that's not good. Like now I've just made half the people uncomfortable. So I think that there is this divide of people who are angry at the fact that you're allowing singing, angry at the fact that you're not allowing singing, angry that you haven't opened up yet, angry that you've opened too soon. I mean, and we're seeing this kind of divide the church itself, at least in terms of talking points right now. So, what are you guys experiencing with that? Max, have you seen that at Cornerstone at all? Those kinds of conversations happening?
Yeah, we had one member that said, "Hey, let's meet Easter anyway. And when the police show up, I'll be the first one to get out of my car and get arrested." He was like, I'll be that guy, And we have others, even on our staff, that were disappointed that we were trying to get people together to worship because they're just fearful that, we might cause somebody to get sick and you don't want to hurt people. So we were one of the first congregations in town to open. We've had 3 different TV news interviews of our pastors to talk about it. They were pretty good, but they're always kind of pushing to try to get you to say something. So like, for example, they asked our pastor, "Do you worry about the safety of your people?" Well,
Clearly not. Nope. Never.
No, but it's a catch-22. You know, like if you say, no, I'm not worried, then you're flippant. And if you say yes, then you say, well, why are you meeting? You know, so that kind of thing. But he did it awesome. As Scott Geiger, he said, I think about it a lot. You know, so, and if you go to our website at cornerstonelutheran.church, you can see our COVID kind of guidelines and restrictions. We've been very, very, again, just very careful, erring on the side of safety. That people,
which is interesting because Geiger's not a safe guy. So
but he's very wise in the way that he's been doing this. So I can't say enough about our senior leadership here. Scott and Pastor Luther Burnett just have done an awesome job, because we've got people that, hey, this is the United States of America, I shouldn't have to be wearing, that kind of thing too, and people at church. But again, it's like we do this because we love our neighbor, and the government is not making us break any laws. Now, there's a difference. If they were forcing us to do something, and that's another thing, and I want to kind of make this point. We told our people when we opened back up that it's okay if you don't come to church and you continue to worship online. That's why we provide it. You're no less a Christian. Your faith is no less if you decide that you don't want to come and meet in person. That's totally cool. We don't want to feel like we're putting a burden on people by opening up to say, oh, well, my church, because some people say if the church doors are open, I'm going to be there. I'll be there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. They've got something, I got to be there. No, it's okay. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. And we've said, if you're over 65, we ask that you not come.
Yeah.
I was talking to a church that opened up, and they said, yeah, we had 25 people here, all over the age of 65.
Yeah.
They were the ones who wanted to come. The rest of the people are like, I'm fine being at home.
Right.
I think the key in this is over communicating what your thought process is, why you're doing what you're doing. I've seen a lot of just, here's what we're doing. Why? Can you explain that?
Right.
If people are getting upset because you're not actually involving them in what that process was, how you got to those decisions.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too to think, like, how do you give people a sense of movement towards something, as opposed to, well, we're doing this, we'll probably be doing this forever, without like, we did this great big fancy thing and then we aren't going to do anything except for live streaming for the next whatever. Like, we've started the conversation of, with our 50-person cap, that it's a draft now, but the feedback form was not a feedback form, it was a compliance form. So there's that. But assuming that stays, we kind of go, okay, so what can we do so that 2 years from now, people say, do you remember when we had those 50 people only services? Do you remember when we did that? There was something special about that. So how do we do something with what we've got that feels good and special and connects God's people, instead of just, well, this is all we can do, so we're going to do it, and we have to be, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think some kind of like real thought by our leaders to do those things. And then I'll also say, one thing I've struggled with a lot is, and I appreciate your comments, Max, about safety and erring on the side of safety. I've struggled a lot with, personally, with folks, I feel like binding my conscience, I guess I'll say, like saying, you don't care about people if you X, like if you go to the park with your kid or whatever. I've really struggled with that. And I've had a couple of friends say, I think we need to think, how can we do what makes the people that are the most afraid feel comfortable? But the other part of me kind of says, I'm not sure if that doesn't feel like a controlling boyfriend relationship. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
oh yeah.
Like, so there's like this weird.
I've never had a controlling boyfriend.
I'm glad I have. But there's this weird tension in that, I think, that so many of us are feeling like, how do I love the person who's feeling really differently than me about this? And how do I serve them at the same time being able to say, hey, I'm kind of over here, and you're kind of over here. How do we love each other and not have more division within God's church?
I was feeling a lot of that same way, Leah. And I think because if it was just me and you involved in this, but the thing is, that if there are 48 other people there at the church, I've got to consider, how is this going to affect them? It's not just me and you, but it's if you're being flippant about it and then that person doesn't feel comfortable or even get sick, heaven forbid, again, I go back to what Paul said in the New Testament, it's not he didn't say it this way, but it's not about you. It's kind of the food sacrifice to idols. Is it okay? It is okay because you have to care, but you have to think about what is this going to do to my neighbor. All things are not beneficial. All things are
permissible,
but not beneficial. So it's like, yeah, can you do it? Is it you don't have to wear a mask if you want, but it's not really about you. It's about how even because I push against. Is it really helpful? Because we didn't have to wear masks at first, and they said don't wear masks at first, and now they say you have to wear masks. So 2 months ago you would have got mad at me for wearing a mask. So now you're getting mad at me for not wearing a mask. So
I equate it like me talking to my kids and being like, smile for the picture, and they go, I don't want to, and I just say, it's for your mother.
Yeah, it's not for you.
No one cares about this but your mom. Smile so we can all get out of here. But that's my encouraging parenting attitude. So they always smile eventually.
Bill, do you have a parenting tips from Adam segment?
Anything Adam does, I'm probably going to shy away from.
I'm thinking of releasing a toilet book, parenting quotes from Adam. Just leave it on the back of every toilet. I think it'd be good. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Leah.
I love this comment that someone did put up here. Adam is the reason that our Synod has a lot of filters in place.
You're welcome, church. All right. Well, let's move on just a little bit here. Concordia is talking about going back here in the next few weeks, so we'll have some updates on that, and steps that we're taking are the ones that it sounds like Cornerstone has been doing as well. Trying to be overly cautious and overly concerned for those who may be scared. Right? Fear is a huge driver. We're seeing that in our world now over the last few days more than ever. So we know that this is a big deal, and we don't want to act like it's not, regardless of where we end up with this thing. I think Leah's point is great. One day we'll look back on this and go like, we did it. We had those 20-person services and they were awesome. And I was there, and it was so great that our church was able to serve in that capacity. Jordaning here on the chat makes a great point, pioneering into this new church look and feel of online. How do we discern the needs and new opportunities to attend to both mindsets? And I think it's on its base level, I would say, like, we have to end thinking the way that we've been thinking in order to start thinking new. And if we're gonna make a change, the transition is just as important as the change itself. So how we get there, how do we do that? Can we end up where we want to be and not where we've just go back to where we've been? Leah hated that, so she left apparently, but that's the idea in terms of discerning the needs. And I think that changes. I think we'd be foolish to lock into one thing this week and hold to it in 2 months from now if it's proving not to work, or it's proving not to reach as many people, or if we see something else that could work better. Max, do you have anything on that?
I mean, I just go back to, some of Phil's questions as far as why are we doing this? What's the purpose for doing this? Because we even talked about, if we could, and Phil, you kind of brought this up, if our live service could be more like our pre-recorded service. And then we had the question, well, how can we make our pre-recorded services more like our live services, to where, going back to the whole, not produced as can be a bad word, but where it's plastic and fake. It's not authentic. And how do you make pre-recorded more authentic?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I appreciate what our church did on the onset is we kept having services, 1 hour services that were done in the sanctuary. We hit record with multicam. We shot it. It went out because I didn't want to go down to the trap of spending a ton of time on all of these, overdoing it. How do we go backwards again when we have to go live? Don't set up expectations that you can't meet going forward. So I feel in a lot of ways we're in a better place than some, but now we're saying, as we're going live, are we going to spend $150,000 to keep doing this? Because at our church, they ended up renting a lot of stuff to do this. And I mean, there is because they weren't streaming before at all. So if you're gonna move forward, we're gonna keep live streaming. And who's that for? Because when you see numbers of 2,000 people attending every service, you're like, holy smokes, we got to keep doing that. Well, those have been sliding. And who is your audience? Because when we went to going live, we would talk to the pastors like, you have one audience and it's that camera. They're all behind there. Now you have two audiences. So when you say we're going to meet in the back for donuts, your live audience is it? So are you saying that differently to the online audience versus the live audience? How does that service look so you're not alienating those people? So is your audience moving forward, or is your intention for them to be a new community and we're creating a worship experience for them and a worship experience for people live in the room? Or is it people who just are a bird on the wire watching us have worship, which could be, like you said, a camera setup, doesn't need to be high tech, but probably not going to engage as well as what we've been doing during COVID? Or is it for someone who just happened to miss church and wants to catch a sermon? So we're putting together some small service for online ministry going forward. And I've had a couple churches that I've talked out of some big capital expenditures to go live, because maybe that's not where you need to put your resources into this big multi-cam perfected shoot. Maybe you need to be doing a condensed service or the bird on the wire watching type of a thing, but then creating a studio space for creating other online content like Bible studies and stuff for small group ministry and confirmation. Those are the pieces you need to work on getting online. So right now I'm trying to help people say, where are you going to invest moving forward? And I think,
can you speak to that timeline? Like, what should we be thinking about at this point, knowing that we're within weeks or months? You know, obviously, if you're just starting to think about this, you're behind.
Yeah.
But if you're not, what's the right way? Like, what's the sequence here, Phil?
Yeah. You know, right now, I think I'll just say what our church has done is we went from, hey, we're off to the races. We are going to be streaming online from here on out. And then we started looking at the actual costs of doing that, just technologically, and then personnel wise to do it well. And said, you know, someone at some point said, our audience is really Gabe, who had hockey this week, and they want to be able to catch church so they know what's going on, or they were in the series, or they're just, you know, worshiping. So, okay, well, that's very different. So now we're going to pre-record a bunch of songs from the band and produce them very well. We're going to do that once or twice a year. And then our service is going to be on Sunday morning. We have an opener for the online community, a song, the sermon that we just recorded that morning at the earliest service, and the prayers, confession, absolution, and then some announcements and a closing song that's pre-canned, and that's sitting in a Premiere timeline. And when the sermon's over, we pull that stick, drop it in there, compress it, upload it, done. You know, so by 11 o'clock, it's ready to go. And then we're going to spend the money on a studio space so that the pastors can be recording Bible studies, confirmation, move a lot of that to a hybrid or online version, because at our church, for instance, we have a lot of small groups, and the pastors historically have not done a lot of live Bible studies. And people have said, man, I really love it when pastor did that walk through the New Testament or that series on Revelation, but he only offered that on Thursday night, and my small group meets on Tuesday nights. So we had to either disband our group for a while so we could move to Thursdays and then come back, or we just missed it. Well, now they're rethinking and saying, maybe all that stuff should be online and your small group is watching it from our online catalog. Well, that doesn't need a 3-camera shoot in the sanctuary. That needs a studio with a 1 camera. So we're putting in a little switcher in your computer and a teleprompter, and the pastor stands there and does his half-hour Bible study into the camera, 1 take. We put headers and footers on it, and we put it up into the library. So that's kind of the plan, and it's going to save like 75% of the cost. And, you know, understanding that we're probably looking at, 20 people when COVID is over watching online, taking advantage of that. So I think those are some important questions to ask. And then right now it's like, so what is that technology? How are we training volunteers? I mean, it is, you guys know who've done streaming. It is stressful to say at 9 o'clock, come hell or high water, we are live online. So your graphics better be right, your sound better be checked, all the cameras better be in the right spot. If someone doesn't show up, you're in a lot of trouble.
Your talkback mic better not be live.
Yeah.
Going to online.
It is incredibly stressful. And I don't know if administrations or even the volunteers understand what that is like. In post-production, if you mess up, you can always start over. You don't get to start over when you make that bad cut, that bad audio when it's live. So I'm just encouraging people really to think hard about that. The easy reaction is we're just going to go live. We're just going to buy 3 cameras, buy a new soundboard. Okay, you're going to train 15 volunteers. When are you going to do that? How many times are you going to practice this? What are your rubrics? What are the words you use and the terms you use? And have you built that rapport between director and camera operators? That can take a long time to foster. So I don't have the perfect answer, but I'm starting to shy away from just encouraging everybody to go into what they think is going to be a polished multicam live experience to rival what they've been doing. I think it's important to change those expectations now with your congregation to say, here's what we've been doing. When this happened, we brought in cameras, and here's a picture of what our sanctuary looks like to make that happen. There are cables everywhere, and the camera is only 6 foot away from the pastor because that's what an affordable camera can do. But if you want the camera to be 130 feet back, I hope you have $20,000 or $30,000 to be able to do that and make it look this good, because the camera we have doesn't do that. So we've decided to make these decisions to offer something for the people who can't make it, but also understand that we have live. This is the type of experience we're going to produce and why we're going to do that. And we're moving toward creating some other resources that'll be online. So I think communicating that, I don't think people have any understanding of what Max, what Ryan, what Leah, what your pastors go through every week to make that happen and look like that. And it's just not going to look the same affordably.
And I think you said that well. I mean, we've talked so much in these last weeks and these webinars about, like, what are your priorities? What are your filters? Put those in place and decide. And I think that the filter you just lifted up, Phil, of like, who is your audience? Who are you serving? Where can you best invest? Like, I think that's huge. Just another thought you'd commented on, Gabe, who can't make it because he's at soccer and that's who you're serving. The other audience that I think is interesting to think about is our homebound audience. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's folks where, like our one of the ladies in our office types out the sermon and mails it to people who just can't connect with online or whatever. But I think, maybe that's the audience you think you're going to primarily serve, is those who are older or unable to, like, what does that mean for you when it comes to doing the work of the church, which is to care for its people and bring the gospel to them? Mm-hmm. That might be part of where you think. I had a pastor or a staff actually mention as just like a brainstorming idea. What if we brought a Chromebook for every one of our homebound members, mm-hmm. and then had someone go over, like, for the first couple, like, month or so and show them how to do it every week? Like, I know they don't all have internet, but wouldn't that be an interesting way to say we love and serve you?
Right.
Just to think about who's our audience, who are we trying to serve, what are we doing? I think is huge. Can I ask Max? I know we're running shorter on time, but one more question I would have for you that maybe you could speak to. What do you wish you had known when you went back live that you know now?
Well, I think the one thing was just the tech piece that I said. I wish we had kind of been prepared a little bit better. That first week back was a little rough. And then the first week that we decided, because we didn't start live streaming again right away. And then the first week we decided to start live streaming. There were some things that happened that I wasn't ready for because we were out of the routine. I think we were set to have like 10 services on a Sunday because we were limited to 50 people in a service. So we're like, well, we normally have, at our Carmel campus, there's 1,000 people on a weekend. We were ready to do a bunch of 50 services with 50 people, and it just didn't happen. So we were really excited to be back, and we thought everybody would be back right away, and it just wasn't the case. So, just be prepared for anything and don't be disappointed. I think we were probably a little disappointed, but, we were prepared.
Thanks. That's really helpful. Adam, from your standpoint, as you're looking at, maybe you're not coming back till September, but maybe you're coming back sooner than that. Like, what are you thinking about? as a worship director?
We're probably coming back in the next couple of weeks in some capacity. In fact, we're doing a service this Saturday, and it's a invite only service, like a test run. We're inviting our elders and their families, and then our school staff and their families. It will be registration. You'll have to, sign up that way. Now, obviously, we're not going to turn people away who show up. So we're having it at an off service time. So we've never had a Saturday at 4:00 service, but that's when this service is going to be. And we feel like that will limit the potential for a lot of people just showing up.
Go
ahead.
Make sure that you scrub everything on your website that has the old times. Because if people hear that you're worshiping, for whatever reason, people continue to come at the old times, and we thought we got that page, and just be super talking about communication. Just be over the top communicative about when your services are happening and what isn't.
Well,
happening.
and this would be a one-time deal, right? And we're sanitizing like crazy. We're making sure that that all of that kind of stuff is happening. We've got a thought process in the community that is saying, we want to do what's right. So we're not publicly going back. And I think that's a big piece, is how do you try some things and incorporate some of the principles that you've been trying online? How do you start to go back, and how do you kind of ease back into things? And I don't know that there's a great way that anybody's figured out how to do it. I like the drive-in ideas. I like the communion service that Max was talking about. We're a church that kind of embraced and has done the online communion, which I think is fantastic. And our people have just loved it. I mean, loved it. And it's been super effective. So, moving from point A, which is where we are now, which is point whatever you want to call it, to the idea of coming back fully, we're trying all these different ideas and trying them out and seeing what happens. We did the graduation service, which I think was awesome because we saw, what does it take to sanitize the room?
Yeah.
And we have a big room. What restrooms do you have to close? And things like that. So I think that's a huge deal to figure out how to do all that.
John Jordaning posted on here, is it fair to say that tech is a new fundamental literacy in worship arts? And I think I could say I've been screaming that for 20 years that it's an important thing. Max can nod his head yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not just in Lutheran circles, but around the board, I watch all these tech people very frustrated that they want to do a good job serving. They never have the resources to do it. And now all of a sudden they were under the gun of, why does this not look amazing? We've never had the tools to do it. We don't have the education, the training to do it. We don't have the volunteers. So yeah, I'd say that is very important. And my gut just says that once COVID's over, it's not like, okay, dodge that bullet, move on. I think we really need to be intentional about what are the online resources we're creating? What is the technology we need to have for the next time, whatever comes about, and we need to be able to flip a switch and go online. So when we started our 211 service back in 2004, we had a camera recording every service and it never went anywhere. And part of that was just to get familiar with a camera. And we have directors talking through stuff, just get to familiar with what that's going to be. So I think now's another time to be training your sound people. Sound is very different in the room or in broadcast, and they're different people. Our sound guys are generally like studio guys. So this was kind of like, this is your time to shine. Yeah. All that, you get to use the effects you haven't used in the past. So I think it's very fundamental. And I think that our Concordia system, our church training needs to be looking at bringing up media tech people who understand ministry, who, I don't get into whether it's a called position or not, but having these tech skills, I think what we saw was that's way more important than people probably thought it was. It was a background thing, and it got brought to the forefront very quickly.
Can I add to that our traditional services at our Carmel campus have never had screens in the room? Oh, we've been wanting to do that for a long time. Well, guess what? When people came back after COVID, there's screens in the room, and nobody's nobody cares because they don't want to be holding a piece of paper that got handed out by somebody else or touched by somebody else. So it was kind of like the perfect time to introduce screens into the room. But if there are those churches out there that don't have screens, what are you going to do? Are you going to give people a piece of paper that other people have touched? Or, you know, are you going to roll in a TV, or, you know, what are you going to do? Because and we're a fairly progressive congregation, but our traditional service still had not had screens in the room until this event.
Well, and in the past, the people in the pews didn't seem to really care about the streaming audience. They didn't want a camera there. They didn't want to mess up their sanctuary. And then all of a sudden, they were really appreciative.
They are
that shot, that angle, that great sound. Well, now coming back, remember how much you appreciated that before? Shouldn't we still provide that? We had a camera crane shot shooting down on a baptism last week. Oh my goodness, that looks so beautiful, which we're not going to do when we come back live. But it was like, we were able to do that during COVID. But there are some other things that maybe you have to be okay with a camera operator standing in the back of the church running a camera if you want it to look like what it did during COVID when you were at home.
Especially when you're staying to serve somebody, you know, and you can say, hey, I know this is not quite what we're used to, and maybe it won't be like this forever, but we're going to have some cameras around the room, guys, today, because we know we have a large population. We still want to serve, you know, Gertrude, who can't come back. She's not ready, and she shouldn't come back. You know?
Right.
Like wearing a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, you don't wear it for you. You wear it for somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Not quite the same thing. But.
Similar.
Great.
All right.
Max, thank you for just bringing your wisdom and experience with us. Really appreciated.
Yeah, and you put my email in there. If anybody has any direct questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, and anybody looking for worship community feedback and things like that, the Wally Facebook page, WALI, is always a great place to get some resources and talk to people who are doing different things. You can also go to wallyonline.com and it'll direct you to the Center for Worship Leadership. So that's walionline.com, and that'll redirect you there. And use lots of information, some podcasts that are great that Steve Zank's been putting together. But that's just a great resource for folks who are looking to go, hey, has anybody tried this? And who fell on their face? And has this been great or what? Feel free to share this webinar and stuff. You see the churchnext.online link there at the bottom. And as always, if there's anything that we can ever do, just let us know.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, y'all.
Take care.